What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Podcast. Today we are joined by Judge Watson, Robert Watson, and it's the first time we have a judge here on the podcast, so we're excited. Hopefully not the last, and we're honored to be joined by Judge Watson today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking with you both today.
And in true mindset fashion, before we get to the meat of the questions and dive into it, we have to pass the warm-up question round, which is always a very interesting part of this recording. So the first one, Judge Watson, is if you could add anyone to Mount Rushmore, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So even though all of the people on Mount Rushmore currently were U.S. presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, I would add Martin Luther King Jr. because I think he had as much influence as many U.S. presidents. Obviously, did so much to move this country uh, closer to its promise of equality for all and making us more of a perfect union. So I think he would be a great contribution to add there, particularly in this day and age when we've seen a lot of kind of violent protest. The fact that he always emphasized peaceful protest, nonviolent means to achieve the ends that he was seeking. So that would be my nomination for adding someone to Mount Rushmore.
That's a great idea, and I love that. And I think again, it's so appropriate given the times that we're currently in. I actually had the pleasure of going to Atlanta in December, and I went to the Museum of Civil Rights and Human Rights. I think is the name. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they had a whole installation of what it was like to be in those times and hearing the voice of Dr. King, and I thought it was really really impressive. And unfortunately, we didn't have, we weren't alive in those times to actually see and hear the voice. You even see the recaps of Dr. King and all the influence that he made, but we definitely see, the ripple effects that he's been able to impact on this country. And I love this question so much, and I don't remember who it was that we had on the podcast, and they actually said that they have a Mount Rushmore almost of like in their head, right? In like a board of directors that they kind of follow, that they always like, if they're ready to make a decision, they're like, hey, should I make this decision? They're always putting those types of people on the pedestal to see. And I know this question isn't on our warm up list, but I wanted to ask you, Judge, is there someone particular besides Dr. King that you have in your board of directors in your mind that you usually go to and kind of seek advice for in your life whenever it comes to making decisions?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, well-known historical figures, a couple come to mind. Number one would be Ronald Reagan. So he was the U.S. president for a lot of my formative years, and I also happened to grow up in the city where his presidential library is, Simi Valley, out in California, in the L.A. suburbs. So he was very influential in my life, and I think what I take away from him was just the positive attitude about this country and how this country has stood in as an example and a beacon for so many people around the world. But what comes with that is the responsibility, to ensure that we continue to improve, continue to get better, so we can continue, being a model for so many other people. So I think just in terms of that work ethic and having a positive attitude, that's someone that I keep in mind. And then the other one is the late Senator John McCain, obviously someone who sacrificed a lot for this country, being a prisoner of war, and always lived by his principles, crossed party lines, looked for ways to work just to achieve progress for this country. And so he's someone I actually had the pleasure of meeting a couple times here in Miami when he was running for president, and I think he's someone that a lot of people follow as an example of extremely positive public service.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two are phenomenal. I think a lot of come to mind when I think of that question, and I always, think of that, and I always love to ask that question because it's so interesting to see what people have to say. But without further ado, we got real deep in the first 5 minutes of this episode, but we'll move on to the next question of this lightning round. This one is also really interesting, and I can't wait to hear what you got to say. But have you ever completed anything on your bucket list?
Yeah, so there are a couple things I've already done. A lot more things to do. One thing I've done already is to go skydiving. I did that actually here in the Keys a couple years ago when one of my brothers came to visit. So that was it was really exciting. It was very scary, like sitting with my legs dangling off the side of the airplane before I jumped. But it was
Yeah.
once I jumped, and then especially once the parachute opened up, then I could just enjoy the ride down to the ground. So that was one thing I did. The second thing I've done is I actually went to experience Carnival in Brazil a few years ago. So that was a tremendous experience. I think that the Carnival in Brazil is probably like nowhere else. So that was a great great party and great exposure just to Brazilian culture and music.
Yeah, Gabe's from Brazil.
Oh,
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am. I am Brazilian. My both my parents were born and raised in Brazil. Moved here 30 years ago. I was born in Miami, but Portuguese was my first language. I haven't had the pleasure yet of experiencing Carnival in Rio de Janeiro, but I've been to Rio before, and that's one of the things that I am very excited to experience one day. But I hear it's phenomenal.
Uau, uau, uau. Então fala português.
Falo português,
Primeira
vamos falar,
língua.
conversar.
So, Judge Watson, how is it skydiving? Is it actually as scary as it looks, or because some people are terrified of it after they go through it, and some people say, "Oh, it's no big deal." What was your take on
um,
it?
I mean, now that I've done it, I actually would do it again. But I mean, it is a little, yeah. I mean, yeah, I did feel scared. I'm sure I would feel scared again because you go up in kind of small plane, and
Yeah.
then once that door's opened up and you're sitting, you're just sitting there on the side. I mean, I went in tandem, so I had like an instructor,
Uh huh.
um, with me, but
Right. Right.
and then but I mean, it's still scary when you just jump out and you're like free falling for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I haven't gotten to that yet. I'm trying to overcome my fear of heights, and hopefully I'll do it. I'll do it soon. I got to do it. For maybe we can talk about it next time I do it. But
Yeah.
that does it for our lightning round of warm up questions. That was fun. Now let's get to know you a little bit more. So just tell us about what a normal day looks like for you. Again, this is the first time we have any kind of judge on the podcast. I know our listeners are excited to hear what a day looks like for you. How is there a lot going on? Is there slow days, fast days? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, so there's kind of some regularity. Each day is a little bit different, but so I've been a judge for 3 years. I'm currently on the circuit court bench, which is the main trial court level here in the state of Florida, and I have been assigned to the criminal division. So the criminal division is very busy. We see everything from, say, possession of cocaine to homicides. And for a county of almost 3 million people, there are just over 20 circuit court criminal judges. So I have like 700 open cases right now. Some of my colleagues have 800, 900. And so it's really kind of like drinking water from a fire hose. Like you're just constantly being bombarded and just kind of juggling to put out fires as they break out. But in terms of like the regular day, so I just like start off my day with a couple cups of coffee at home to really get some caffeine in my system. Watch maybe a little bit of local national news to know what's happening in the world, and then I start my morning calendar every day at 9 a.m. The morning calendar is very regular things like when the prosecutors announce what charges they filed against defendants, and then the defendants' attorneys enter a not guilty plea, and then I set the case for a date for like a trial several months out. Then we have motions to people who might be in custody asked to be released on a monetary bond, on a GPS monitor, something of that nature. So we get a wide variety of things on the morning calendar. People asking to terminate their probation early, people who want property returned, things of that nature. That morning calendar usually goes from 9 o'clock until 11, 11:30, 12. Then we take a lunch break. Oftentimes, there are events at lunch. like today being with you all. But other days, different bar organizations have different lunchtime events with panelists. So that's a chance to interact with lawyers and other judges. Some days I have lunch with my colleagues, and that's a great opportunity to stay connected and kind of talk about different things that we're all seeing, and help each other out, share our perspectives. And then some days I'll have lunch with attorneys or law students, maybe try to do some mentoring. So that's kind of the lunchtime. Then in the afternoon, there are really three things that happen. One, I prepare for the next day. So that morning calendar, many of the things I know ahead of time, what's going to be on the next day's morning calendar. I try to read motions ahead of time so that I'm aware of what the issue is, and it makes the morning calendar more efficient for everyone. In addition to prepping for the next day, there are often administrative tasks to take care of, and so that pretty much fills up the afternoon. Now, there are many days like today when there are hearings, there are longer hearings that I set for the afternoon. So today I have a sentencing at 1 o'clock where I have to hear arguments from both sides and then impose a sentence on a defendant. And then there's another hearing I have after that, which is what we call an evidentiary hearing, when the lawyers are coming in, they're having witnesses testify about particular issues, and then I have to make a decision. The other thing that happens in the afternoon some weeks is that if we're in a jury trial, that morning calendar, I keep it short, and it will only go until about 10 o'clock. And then we'll be hearing from witnesses from 10 o'clock until about lunchtime. And then we come back in the afternoon and just keep hearing from witnesses as long as we're in trial. So the afternoons vary from day to day, week to week, but always filled with something. And then, and then in the evening, there are often other events. Different bar organizations or other community organizations have events, and judges are invited to a wide variety of events, which is a good way to stay connected with not only the legal community but also the greater community that we serve. So um, there may be events from a chamber of commerce, a bar organization, some kind of a charity, maybe raising money to help children who have certain needs, something of that nature. So it's a pretty full schedule. It's certainly not like 9 to 5. We're pretty much kind of always on duty, so to speak.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm gathering from what you're telling me. You got a jam-packed schedule. But let me ask you, look, Judge, I've seen Law and Order, okay? I've seen the way they treat those judges. I see the way, like, I've never thought anyone really, seeks out to be a judge. What about being a judge inspired you? Is this something that you wanted to do early on in life, or is this something that you kind of stumbled upon? But how did that transition happen? What inspired you to be in the position that you are in today?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've heard some judges speak, and some people sort of had the goal from a very early age. So that was not my case. I was interested in law and in government from an early age, like junior high school, and then I competed in speech and debate. I really liked the advocacy. Um, so I always wanted to be a lawyer, but it wasn't until I had been a lawyer for maybe about 10 years that I started to think about the possibility of becoming a judge. And what really got me thinking about that was I was in private practice for a few years. So I came to Miami directly out of law school in 2003. My entire legal career has been here in Miami. So I was at a couple of law firms and got into court fairly regularly, but not every day. But in 2011, I was fortunate enough to become a federal prosecutor and assistant United States attorney here in Miami. And as an AUSA, I was in court pretty much every single day before a variety, like pretty much all the judges, federal judges in Miami. And just that experience of being in court so much and seeing the work that judges do started me thinking that, that would be something that I think I would find rewarding it would be a way to give back to the community, a different form of public service, and also that it was something, that I thought I might be able to do well. So the idea was kind of rattling around in my mind for a while. Um, and finally, I decided to apply in 2019 to become a state court judge. And so I went
Mm.
through the whole process, and was appointed by the governor back in early 2019. So that's what started me on this path.
Well, you have a very, very successful record, and you have a lot of things that I can clearly see you're very proud of. And every time I bring you up in conversation at the LBA event that I was at last week, everybody always has great things to say about you, and you're very well known in the community and very successful as a judge. And it's only been a few years, and I can only imagine what you have left in your career. Is there a person maybe that you can attribute a lot of your success to, or somebody who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader?
Yeah, so I would say, I would say from very early on that, and I owe so much to my mother for
Mm.
just the way that I was raised. And at the time, like I didn't know anything different, right? So
Mhm.
only like later in life, looking back, do I realize just how important her support was, just in terms of sacrificing herself for me and my brothers to sort of make sure that we had everything that we needed to succeed academically and with our activities, and just really encouraging us and me to do whatever I wanted to do, and become whatever I wanted to. So I think that's true for a lot of people, that the love and support from their parents is obviously key. The other thing I would say is that my mother was very like energetic and very creative, and so that I think that just stimulated me at an early age, to be very active, involved in activities, involved in the community, and try to be like very creative and also practical, in terms of what I'm doing now, finding solutions
Mhm.
for problems that come before me. And the last
Mhm.
thing I would say that was really influential and I think so important was that my mother was always very thoughtful about other people. So family
Mm.
members, neighbors, um, other like like friends that I had. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a characteristic that she helped me to develop, is trying to think about all the people that I come in contact with, and try to
Mm.
be a positive influence in on the
Mm.
people within my sphere.
Mm, that's wonderful, and it seems like you sit with that experience that you had with your mother, of her being such a big part of your life. It looks like you're trying to kind of pay it forward by, I think you mentioned it earlier a little bit, how you now mentor some people who may want to be a judge or who want to go into that field that you're in. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you go about mentoring someone? Do they usually approach you, and how does that connection establish? Maybe you can help some of our listeners right now who are looking for a mentor but don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, I think having one or more good mentors is so important. Because there's no reason that people sort of would know how to navigate a particular system, or the best way to go about trying to obtain their goals, and achieve their dreams. So for people who are interested in law, I've been involved in different. So number one is the Federal Bar Association is a great organization because they have chapters in the local law schools, and there are events specifically to hook up or connect law students with attorneys. So the Federal Bar Association has a mentorship program which is well established. Another one is uh, attorney John Koziak, whose firm is Koziak, Tropin, and Throckmorton, has long had a minority mentoring program where they also connect students with attorneys and judges. So there are definitely organizations out there who have established programs. Um, the other way, though, that I would say is basically anyone that students come in contact with, whether it's seeing someone on a panel or going to some sort of a mixer. In my experience, most attorneys, most judges are really more than happy to help students and pay it back. And so I would say just don't be shy about, if you meet an attorney or a judge, like get their contact information, follow up with an email, and ask to meet for coffee, meet for lunch, what have you. Um, but I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. People really willing to give back. So just try to find one or more mentors, and then it's great to develop that relationship over time and have somebody, who is looking out for you. And if they see a job opportunity come up, or an opportunity to serve in a leadership position in an organization, that they might shoot you an email and just say, just FYI, I thought of you when I saw this, something like that, because that can be really important, just in terms of kind of staying in the loop with your professional community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And so many of our listeners are in that position, like Anthony mentioned, either fresh out of college, still in college, maybe they're just entering the workforce and they're kind of looking and scouting to see who can they really, model after and who can they look after. And like you mentioned, there's so many resources available to us that it's as simple as a Google search, maybe, just typing in networking events or, certain committees or organizations or LBA, certain things that you can be a part of that are free, that are in your hometown that you can go and be a part of. And you said something really interesting, Judge, and I wanted to kind of touch on is that a lot of times people, whether in a position of leadership like yourself or, someone at, a company that you might want to work for, if you even shoot them an email, give them a call, they're more than likely, willing to give up some information and really help you and kind of even show you some things that they've done before. And I've done that myself, and people are like, oh, are you sure? Do you think they'll really answer? I think I over COVID specifically, when we were really like kind of like locked down, we really couldn't do much. I think I emailed and DM'd maybe 50 people that I kind of look up to. And I would say more than half of them responded. And we had a conversation and they kind of just gave me some advice on what they were doing in their business, in their company. And I really, really was encouraged by it. So one of my teachers from middle school, and I'll never forget this, if you don't ask, you said that if you don't ask, they don't tell. And I think that's so important to model after, is that if you don't just simply ask the question, a lot of people won't be willing to give up the information, but the only step is just to ask that question. So I think that's so good. um, but talking about leadership and in this topic, I wanted to ask you, you being a judge, I'm sure you interact, like you said, with a lot of leaders and different people in leadership positions. What is one of the biggest challenges you see today's leaders, whether it's in Miami, hyper local here in 305, or from a general standpoint, in the US? What is the biggest challenge that leaders are facing today in 2022?
So I think one of the biggest challenges, which we've seen a lot lately, is just the challenge of building consensus and really achieving results, right? Because there's a lot of rhetoric, and there's a lot of division in our society and in our country. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges as a leader. How can you how can you really set out to achieve goals, and how do you get other people on board? Both other leaders that you may need to work with, whether it's on a city council, on a board, in Congress, and then how do you get people, because in this day and age, a lot of us, we're in like silos, right? Or echo chambers, where we talk to a lot of people who maybe have the same perspectives, but it can make it harder to kind of compromise and to work with other people. And maybe you're not going to agree 100% with them, but you can agree enough on a certain goal to reach that goal that many people might want. So I think that's a big challenge, is finding a way to work with other people to achieve kind of a common goal.
So, Judge, what do you think the solution is? How can young leaders today have that dialogue without being confrontational about it? Because I know the hot button issues of the day are happen to be some of the more important ones, right? Talking about politics. That politics is important; it's part of our daily life. But a lot of people, I feel, especially in my age, 20-year-old young folks, they stay away from those kinds of conversations because they've seen on the news and probably from experience that there's clashes when that conversation comes up. So what kind of solutions might you propose for us to have those difficult conversations so that we can, although have different viewpoints, and that's okay, come to the table together to get things done?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Is how, how for the next generation will, will this be, approached, and what would the solution be? So I think, I think there are a lot of young leaders who are doing things like, for example, like your podcast. I mean, this is a good way for people to come together, share ideas, and to at least start a conversation. um, so I'm optimistic because I see a lot of people who are doing a lot of good things, and I see it even in the courtroom. You have the classic adversarial system where you have the prosecutors on one side, and they have a lot of power, a lot of discretion, and they have the responsibility of enforcing our state's criminal laws. Then on the other side, you have the defense attorneys, whether it's the public defender or private attorneys, who have the responsibility to zealously advocate and represent the interests of their clients. So, you know, there's real like tension and opposition there. And so both sides have to be open to at least hearing from the other side. So like for the prosecutor, be open to hearing from the defense attorney why the defendant, why there's some kind of mitigating circumstances that should lead the prosecutor to maybe offer a lower punishment than he or she would offer otherwise. And on the defense side, to be open to listening to what concerns the prosecutor has, particularly about protecting the community, from a particular defendant. And so, sometimes things get a little heated in the courtroom, but I do see with young attorneys, that they do work together, and I'm very fortunate that the attorneys in my courtroom are very professional and collegial, and so I try to do everything I can to encourage that, and I think more widely in society, I think the more that we all can just encourage open dialogue with respect, that goes a long way towards solving problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that again, it fits so clearly into the current climate that we're dealing with. That, like Anthony mentioned, if politics is a topic of conversation, someone usually leaves that conversation upset or angry. And unfortunately, that's the case right now. But I think it's important, to really focus on who you're listening to, and where you're getting information from. And like you mentioned, Judge, I feel like everyone is entitled and right to have a say, to have an opinion, and sometimes it's okay to agree to disagree, right? But I think, like, going back to leadership and the people that we look up to, and especially now with social media being such an influential platform that people have, I've seen people in positions of leadership that they might not be mature enough to have that voice or that position at that point. And I've even heard a quote before that it says something along the lines of, the right thing at the wrong time might be, a disaster, right? What waiting to happen. So there's no doubt that there are some people that are sought out to be leaders, and they're going to be very influential in their communities, but I think that sometimes they lack the leadership from others and the advice from others. But with that being said, what advice would you give to a young person, going into his or her first position of leadership, and what can they expect from being at that point?
So I would recommend and suggest to somebody going into a first leadership role to just remember humility, because sometimes if somebody reaches a leadership position, maybe through a contested election, sometimes they can they can feel very like full of themselves, I guess. And a sense of accomplishment is certainly like deserved when you reach a leadership position, but I think it's important, to definitely respect others, to listen to others, and don't be afraid to admit what you don't know, because I think most people can kind of sense um, when you don't know, or if you're just kind of bluffing. And I think people tend not to respect that, but they do respect someone who admits, what he or she doesn't know, because it shows humility, and it also shows a desire to learn and to improve. So I think when you become a new leader and you show respect to other people, you listen to other people, you admit what you don't know, that helps build others' respect for you. And as a leader, it's so important to have the respect of the people you're leading,
Mm,
because really your success as a leader, it's based on the results you achieve, but also the people that you have supporting you and that you bring
mm,
along with you. Because for so much of what leaders do, you need buy-in from other people,
yeah.
and you need their cooperation, and you need them to say go implement the things that you want to get done. So the more the more respect you have from the people you're leading, the better you're going to be as a leader. So that
Mm.
would be my advice.
So well said. That's a mic drop moment right there, because everything you said is just so great, and that's why so many people, I believe, respect you and look up to you. Gabe and I are one of those people that admire your work, and you're a leader in our community, and we appreciate the good work that you do, and it comes with you being humble and not demanding the respect from people, but you earned it. You earned that respect, and I think that's a very that's a topic I feel not a lot of people talk about. That leaders really need to earn the respect from their subordinates or the people they serve, because without that, people aren't going to follow someone they don't respect. So very well said. And as we wrap up here, I just have one last question, um, and that is, how do you ensure, as a leader yourself, Judge Watson, how do you ensure that you continue to grow as a leader? My dad would always tell me when I was younger to never settle. Once you reach a certain level of success or you get a position or a title, to not just stay there and be satisfied. I think that's the word. Satisfied is very dangerous as a leader. You should never be satisfied, is what I was taught at least. How do you continue to grow and develop as a leader as far as next steps that you have for your personal life and maybe career wise as well?
Yeah, that's great advice that your dad gave you, because that is so important to always, you know, always grow and develop as a leader, because there are always things that can be done better. There's always more that we can learn and know to make, to allow us to continue to lead, and the best leaders do that, because otherwise you're just going to remain stagnant, and at a certain point, kind of things are going to move, be by you, pass you by, and then you're not going to really, at a certain point, you won't be seen as a leader anymore by the people that you're trying to lead. So it's so important. What the ways that I continue to grow and develop are, first of all, like exposing myself to other leaders. So attending events where other judges are speakers, lawyers are speakers, elected officials are speakers, to always be learning from other people, because of course, we have leaders in so many different spheres and different organizations, right? So everyone's going to have different experiences. And so I really enjoyed learning from the experiences and the lessons that other people can share. And then just talking with other people, whether it's my judicial colleagues, whether it's, when I'm out in the community, talking with business leaders, talking with people who work in healthcare, political leaders, whatever it might be, just sort of watching, listening, talking, and always trying to learn from experiences other people have had.
Absolutely. I heard recently from one of my mentors, and he told me that there's only two ways of learning, and those two ways are either you're gonna make those mistakes yourself, or you're gonna learn from the mistakes of other people have already made, right? And I think that's
Right.
exactly what you're talking about now. And us as young people, especially, we have the opportunity to learn from others and seek out that mentorship from people. And leadership, like you mentioned, it's about serving those around you, right? People a lot of times think that if you're in a position of leadership that you're on some high top mountain that everyone looks, up at you, and you got to make these big decisions. Yes, you do have to make big decisions at some point, but a lot of the times it's making sure that those people around you, respect you, and trust you, and just feel safe around you. And I think that you're definitely demonstrating that in your industry and everything that you're doing. Like Anthony mentioned, you know, you're so respected in all realms of Miami here, especially in this town, which is so saturated with different people that may do the right thing and may not do the right thing. So you're such a good example of that. And we appreciate you taking the time and speaking to our audience, especially about that. But before we go, I want to ask you, where can our listeners find you on LinkedIn? Maybe where can they reach out to you if they have any questions? And where can the people find you?
Sure, yeah. The easiest way would be if you just Google Judge Robert Watson, Miami. I have my contact information on the official court website, has email address, a telephone number, and if you look on LinkedIn, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Robert Watson, on Instagram, on Facebook, and I also have. So people might not know, but state court judges in Florida are elected. So I'm actually currently campaigning. So they'll find campaign information googling that as well. But the campaign has all the social media. So if they'd be interested in following kind of the campaign as it progresses, they can look for that too online.
Wonderful. And Judge, what is the website again, so people can go to it? Your campaign website.
Oh, the campaign website is Robert Watson, the number 4, judge.com. So Robert Watson for judge.com.
Perfect. And we'll put in the show notes, so if anybody listening wants to go check it out, we'll link it up right here. Again, Judge Watson, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck in your campaign. We see you doing the good work, and we're cheering you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. It's been really great talking with you.